Hey everybody, this episode of Amputate to Elevate, the Leadership Success Podcast, is powered by Inspired Communications International, helping leaders navigate high-stakes transitions through purpose-driven storytelling and courageous leadership. Welcome to Amputate to Elevate, Leadership Success. This show is for leaders facing high-stakes transitions and learning from those who have lived through them. I'm John Register. Today's guest is someone I deeply respect, not just for his accolades, but for the ability to listen for greatness and then tell stories that stick. Don Yaeger is a Hall of Fame keynote speaker, business leadership coach, 12-time New York Times best-selling author, and host of the Corporate Competitor podcast. He's National Geographic Storyteller in Residence and longtime associate editor at Sports Illustrated, and a master of turning lived experience into leadership insight. He's worked with Fortune 500 leaders and cancer survivor groups alike. He shared the mic with legends and walked into war zones with nothing but a notepad and a mission to tell the truth. But here's what makes Don different. He doesn't just report stories, he lives them, extracts the lessons, and then helps the rest of us grow from them. In this episode, Don opens up about what he had to amputate to elevate. We're going to talk about ego. But that's not all. We go deep into what it means to surround yourself with excellence, how to lead with curiosity, the power of preparation, and why the best leaders are the best storytellers. But before we get into it, and before we do and get started, do me a favor. If this podcast speaks to you, like, subscribe, and follow wherever you listen, and then share it with someone navigating a big shift right now. This is how we grow together. So let's dive in. I told you, ladies and gentlemen, we have him on. Look at that. Look at all that stuff in his background. Don Yaeger is right here. Oh my gosh. Don, welcome to Amputate to Elevate Success.
John, thank you so much. I've been a huge fan for a long time, as you know, and the honor that we had to be inducted into the Hall of Fame as brothers together is really, it was one of the greatest moments in a career, and to get to share it with you made it even better.
Wow, such a special night. We might
Really
get
was.
into that. But first, I want to chat with you about first question we always ask every guest is, Don, what did you have to amputate in order to elevate to your success?
Mm. I love that question. I love the way you ask it of your guests. I love some of their answers. I will tell you, when I thought about how I would answer it, I think the thing I had to learn to lose was a little bit of ego. You know, I had, I was pretty convinced that the world was better because I was in it for quite some time, and I had to be knocked down a few times to recognize that I wasn't some of the things I had grown to believe about myself. And I will tell you that without question, um, the shift in the mindset that occurs when you begin to start thinking a little less of yourself uh, is was one of those things that probably propelled success more rapidly for me than anything I could have ever imagined, because I conducted myself differently in the presence of other people. I appreciated things that maybe previously I had thought were my birthright, right? And as all of that ego shift really began to take hold for me a good 20 years ago, it completely shifted the way things started turning out for me. So I don't know that that's as good an answer as some of your previous guests have given, but for me, I really thought it was uh, just I had to amputate a little ego.
You know, that is the answer is the answer. And what's going on in my head right now is once we learn something, to master it, we become a teacher of it. So how have you used that of amputating the ego and all the business that you have done, all the executives that you have worked with to help them understand that amputating ego might get them a little bit further than what they previously thought?
It's a great question. I would tell you that I don't know that I've tried to tried to teach it to other people. I think I've tried to live it.
Mhm.
And St. Francis of Assisi had a great had a great line many years ago. He said, "Preach the Bible every day. If required, use words." Right. So I've really taken to how do I conduct myself when I'm talking to others, whether they're people that I would consider the superior to me, best in the class in whatever they're doing. How am I how am I not gushing, but in fact showing respect? How am I speaking to those who might look at me as someone they would love to learn from? How do you conduct yourself in all of those conversations and the authentic way you can present yourself with a little less ego allows others to appreciate that in you, and ultimately if they begin to feel it, then you don't have to preach it, right? You don't have to try to
Mhm.
teach it to other people. You just live it.
That's really great. I mean, it seems so simplistic, but we know that there was a gentleman out there, Alan Stein, one of our speaker in the speaker community.
Love
He
me
coached
some
my
Allen.
son. Yeah, he coached my son at Montrose Christian when my son was actually the point guard for Kevin Durant
No kidding.
out there. So it's pretty cool. But I got a chance to talk to him along the way before he became blown up as a speaker, right? And one of the things he did was he tried to beat Kobe Bryant to the gym and failed because no
Yep.
one beats Kobe into the gym or did. And then he saw Kobe just working on footwork and foot drills for an hour, and layups at the basket right at the rim. He's like, "Why? You're the best basketball player in the world, arguably. Why are you at the right at the rim working on foot drills?" And Kobe shoots back, right? Why do you think I'm the best basketball player in the world?
In the world, right?
And so sometimes it's the foundation things that really set us up for the success, and we often will forget those foundational things. What are the foundations for you? What are the foundations that you have to have this baseline, this platform in order for you to elevate?
So for me, it's over prepare, right? I try in most every setting I find myself to be over prepared. Recently I'm not comparing myself to Kobe, no, nor in any way, but I travel during the summers with my children. Each child gets to spend a week of that summer on the road with dad. And one of the things that happened a year ago with my son, we were in Raleigh, North Carolina. I had a speech coming up at about noon, but he wakes up and there I am at 8 a.m. standing in the room practicing my speech, and at 9 a.m. I'm practicing it again. And finally he says, "Dad, you've given that speech hundreds of times. Why do you need to practice it?" And it's like, son, it's so I get to give it 100 more, right? And so it doesn't matter how confident you might be in your own skill set, the willingness to prepare, the willingness to do the work that no one sees, right? In this case, my son saw it, but no one else did. I think is the difference between what's allowed me to be good and what I hope will allow me to be great one day.
You've taken your children on the road with you, as you said, many times. What have you learned from them?
One of the things that we do when we travel, and we've been doing this since they were like 5 and 6 years old, right? Is that when we go away, uh, they other than the time that I'm required to work, so we're together for a week, and other than the time I'm required to work, their job is to fill the schedule with things they want to learn in the city that we're going to. So
Hmm.
they have to study the city. They have to look at what might be of interest to them, and they have to help me build a game plan for what we're going to do while we're together. And what I guess I've learned while I'm with them as much as anything is in those moments, it's not me as the parent saying, we'll do this, we'll do that. It's them laying it out. And I'm often along for things that I think are not that intellectually stimulating, but they matter to them.
Yeah.
And as a result of the fact that they matter to them, I think they feel like I'm investing in their life. I'm not always just parenting. Sometimes I'm there for the ride. And it allows us to have a relationship that I hope will keep us bonded for many, many years. I think, there are a lot of kids that feel like they've been told so much that the moment they don't have to be told, they're out. And I hope that that's not the relationship I'll have with mine.
No, you're building something I think that's very strong. And being able to take children, in my case, some of my grandchildren, on the road with me when I travel is just, it's so fun to watch them and watch them watch the reactions of other people because they only know me as one
Right,
person, right? I'm Papa, I'm granddad, but they don't see this other. Why do they keep coming up to you, Dad? Right?
right.
And so
Yeah,
it opens up these conversations, and then, like you said, they get a chance to choose. And so it reminds me of a story that you told. We were at the National Speakers Association. You did a fantastic job on a fireside chat with who was it that was interviewing
Sherry
you?
Leviton.
Jerry Leviton. It was a great interview. And so it reminds me of a story that you were talking about with Shaquille O'Neal and him being mentored as you're kind of mentoring your children, as he's being mentored by the legendary, the great John Wooden. And you get a chance to be a fly on the wall. So we'd love to share that story. That's the first thing.
That's
And
Shaq's shoe
then
over my shoulder right there.
that's
That's
what,
his size 23 and a half shoe right there, Shaq's.
oh my
That,
gosh.
that, that's a shoe that he gave me after a game one time.
We're looking at it. We're looking at Shaq's shoe right behind him, right?
There you go.
I don't think that's John Wooden's shoe, but that's
No, not John
surprising.
Wooden.
So share the story. Then B, what happened as an outcome for you? C, who you mentor now, and D, the book that came out of the conversation with Coach Wooden. And I have an E question as well that I'm going to ask, but I want to hear those answers first for our audience to just understand the mindset of the man that we're talking about today with Don Yaeger.
Well, the mindset is constantly being shifted based upon the people that I get to learn from. But in this particular case, the story you're referring to was one that I had the chance to learn while I had been exposed to Coach Wooden through a relationship I had with a man named Dale Brown, a basketball coach at Louisiana State, who was Shaquille O'Neal's college coach. And Dale Brown shares with me that Shaq, when he's 26 years old, he's the hip hop star of the LA Lakers. He is going on a regular basis out to spend time with John Wooden. Shaq's 26, coach is 88, and he's there. And I'm thinking, what could the two of them talk about for hours on end? And so I asked to be invited, and Shaq said, "Yeah, I mean, but Don, this is a mentoring session for me. I'm there to learn." And so I go and I sit and I watch John Wooden and Shaquille O'Neal talk for almost 3 hours, never once about basketball. They talk about being a better father, better husband, a better a better teammate to others around him, a better leader of the team that he was being paid to represent, better leader in his community. And as these conversations going on, it comes to a close, and I look at Coach Wooden and I said, "By the way, that was fantastic. I appreciated all that I learned. But how does someone get mentored by someone as extraordinary as you?" And he said, "You ask." And I said, "Well, how many people ask?" And he said, "Not as many as you might think." He said, "Most people don't ask because they immediately assume there's no way someone like Coach Wooden would ever say yes." So, wow. Go away, write a story about this unbelievable lesson I was learning from the two of them. Reach back to Coach Wooden, ask him what he thought of the story. He was positive. And I said, "Coach, something tells me I was supposed to ask as I was standing there. And he said, Don, what took you so long? And over the course of the next 12 years, every other month, I would fly to California to spend a day learning from John Wooden. My responsibility was to come well prepared, to come with questions, because the moment my questions ended, the day ended. So I wanted to have as many questions as I could prepared to ask him for his wisdom, to ask him to teach me. And about three-quarters of the way through that, he asked me one day, Don, you've written books about all these different things, but you've never written about mentoring. But here we are. He said, why don't we do a book on mentoring together? And so we did. It's called A Game Plan for Life, and it came out on John Wooden's 99th birthday. It
Wow.
was fantastic. It was one of my favorite projects ever because it was driven not by a desire to go meet him to write a book, but by a desire to go meet him to have him pour into me. That's what a good mentor does. And it was really fantastic, and what a great experience for me, and changed my life because he regularly taught me the power of asking good questions and then being willing to do something with the answers you receive. And that was the first thing I had to do every time we got together was I had to tell him what I did with what he taught me the previous time we were together, because that he said that gave him energy to keep giving me more. And so, what a great lesson in mentorship and mentoring.
I want to thank you for sharing that. I want to share with you what happened after that
Mm.
conversation that you so graciously had with Sherry, and us hanging on by every word that you were saying. I'm like, well, and folks that don't know, these are like $1 zillion speakers in the room, right?
He's
These
the
are like high
best
level,
speakers on the
high
planet,
powered.
right?
These are the cream of
I
the
was
crop.
intimidated sitting in front of him.
I was intimidated just to be in the room, and but we get this. What happened is a woman came up to me afterward and said, "I would like for you to mentor me,"
Mm,
and I immediately thought of that story, and I said yes, um, with those parameters, because
mm,
you gave me some from Coach Wooden, some
right,
parameters around. We'll go for an hour, because that's my time commitment. And when you run out of questions, session's over.
right,
And then when you come back the next time, tell me what you did with what I shared with you.
right.
And I thought that was fantastic. And the reason I wanted you to bring it up was because I see you mentoring into your children right now, because you give them the project, you come up with the itinerary, not me. It's your job. And so if you don't come up with anything, we're just going to sit in this hotel room and look at each other.
Right.
Call room service.
Which would
I'll
get
try
pretty
it.
boring after a while.
It can be pretty boring. Can I get another steak, please? Um, so, question I have, my question is, that's a pretty powerful mentor.
Mm,
I mean, so well respected.
mm.
Who mentors you now?
Oh my gosh, I have a handful. Some of whom are extraordinarily powerful. John Maxwell. John Maxwell and I get together, and I come well prepared to ask him questions to learn. Um, I love it. He asks me questions in return, which is pretty fun. I have younger people who just want to. I have a pretty significant sporting coach at Florida State University who just recently asked, can she come over and just spend time in the office just sitting and learning? And I thought, how great is that? Because while she's going to ask me questions, I'm going to learn from her as well. And so I'm constantly seeking mentors. One thing that Coach Wooden shared with me, and we were together long enough that it never ended this way, but he said sometimes mentors are really important for a season, like they're really good for you for a window of time. And then there's a time that maybe you need to go find somebody else, and there's no disrespect meant in that, right? Sometimes a good mentor is really powerful for someone in a season. So I'm constantly um, I don't ever think of having one or two mentors at any given time. I'm constantly in the pursuit of an opportunity to learn from someone, and that season may only last a few sessions, but I have a number of folks today in different portions of my life that I lean into to learn from and grow.
Merle Pingasdall, Colonel, retired, United States Air Force, and came over from the Navy. Only black woman to fly the U-2 reconnaissance plane. It's a
Very cool.
spy plane, flies at 70,000 feet. So you get a
Yep.
different perspective. You see the curvature of the Earth. It could take a picture of the pimple on your nose
Which is
from
amazing.
70,000, almost in outer space. And she made it clear that she needed mentors, uh, and later on became a mentor. I want you to share just a little bit. This was on a previous episode, but I'll share a little bit for leaders. Why is it important for them to create either a program or have a culture around mentoring inside of their business?
So I will share with you, you mentioned two words there, program or culture, right, within your business. So what I've learned in studying high performing teams, talking to great leaders who think along these lines, is that the best are actually trying to create that mentoring culture, not a
Mm-hmm.
mentoring program. If it's
Right.
a program, it's often a box you check and say, yes, I attended this session once a month for 12 consecutive months, and now I'm available for promotion or whatever it is, right? That's a program. The best ones understand that if it's not really cultural, if it's not something where I'm pouring into you and you're accepting that, then really it frankly can be a loss of 24 hours of time over the course of a year. Your
Yep.
hour and my hour, each month for the next year. And no good business really wants that to be the case.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe you have to create that culture. You have to say, are you open to learning? Are you open to teaching? Because in a good mentoring relationship, you actually do both. Both parties contribute to the other. Um, but I think that's cultural.
Hmm. I agree. I see programs are, check the box programs, and really from the onset of establishing a culture of that, even in the hiring process. So we're looking to go with our vision, our mission, our values, more particular in the values of the organization, saying this is the culture we're trying to create. And part of this culture, we're offering mentoring, and we want that buy-in from the onset of it. Uh, we were out at Real Leaders together
Hmm.
in
That's right.
California. Amazing. It was new to me. So, and they
Me
give
as
out
well.
these awards. Top 50 global leadership speakers. There's like Brene Brown on there. There's Simon Sinek. There's uh, Tony Robbins, Sage Robbins, his wife, and then there's Don Yaeger, uh,
And John Register,
and
two
John
slots
Rich.
ahead of me. I saw today.
uh, when you go into a room like that and you have all these executives that are in front of you, how are you? You said you're over preparing, and so I don't want you just to talk about how you prepare physically, but take us from the standpoint of how leaders, how executives can prepare for their meeting or prepare for their fireside chat or delivering the news to their shareholders or whatever it is that they have to do as a storyteller to begin to bring people into their world so they can have more maximum impact.
I think the biggest thing that leaders need to remember is that the stories that people remember are about people. They're not about numbers. They're not about statistics. They're not about flow charts or pie charts or any other kind of chart. The things that people will remember are the stories you tell about other people. So if you want to try to explain to me why we collectively need to move in this direction, um, tell me how that's going to affect people like me. Tell me how that's going to affect the people we serve. And don't tell me about them in generic form. Tell me about how this is going to affect John Register. How is what we're doing? Here's where John Register is today. Here's where he hopes to be. Here's how what we're doing is going to help him get there. And now suddenly I'm on the journey to help John Register arrive, right? And but it's can I relate the story to someone that I can see in my own mind's eye, right? And one of the great challenges is that too many people get caught up and they think they're telling stories, but what they are is they're being amorphous, right? The concepts are
Mm,
too big. The
hmm.
truth is, bring it down to lessons that I can learn and understand and put a face on. And so a big part of being overprepared in this situation is is having a story to tell. There are too many
Yeah.
times that we're busy in these, and we're so busy that we don't do the work to know a little something about someone we're having impact on. And that I mean, you watch great candidates do it in politics, right? They won't just tell you a story. They'll tell you the story about, John Smith, who lives on Meridian Street, and how when I was just with John Smith not long ago, talking to him about his challenge, that, now suddenly people are realizing that this isn't just a campaign speech, if you will. It's an opportunity for the candidate to explain how what he's doing or what he or she is doing is going to have impact on a specific person at a specific address on it. The ability to make it human is a lost art for many, but it is the coin of the realm for the storyteller.
Making the story human. That's I'm furiously writing down because I got so many notes and questions I want to
Well,
ask
John,
around
I
this.
mean, as I've listened to you tell stories, right? I mean, when you tell the story about the overhead cabin, right? The overhead storage space in the cabin. I mean, it's funny because it's you're explaining where you are, where you're sitting when you're there, which means I get to feel like I'm sitting next to you as you're telling the story. But then you're telling the story of someone else, and then the person that opens the overhead cabin, and I can see it, but it's very human. But there's a little humor in it. But there's a great lesson in it as well. And it's such a great story for you because you're able to kind of bring what you do in for a close with that story. So that it encapsulates so much of the content you're trying to share, but you do it through telling a story of yourself, of others, in a situation that I can, in my mind, see.
Yes, it's my learning, right? It was so I
Right.
do my story, my lesson, my point, and then we share it with the audience so that they can see how it works inside of their.
Yeah, we
Um,
talk all the time that if you really want to do impactful storytelling, you think story, lesson, what did I
mhm,
learn, and application, what can you do with what I learned? Story,
right.
lesson, application. And if you can do those three things in that order as you're sharing something with someone else, you're leaving something memorable, but you're also offering to change something about them, which will make them better.
And if you really want to know the deep secret, keep on following me because I'll tell you how to go even further than that. But you need those three
Oh,
first, and I'm not giving it to you. You got to come and we'll peel back the onion in another episode so that you'll be more impactful and people they'll never associate it. They may associate the story with you, but it's going to resonate with them
with
100%
them.
with
Right.
them. Um, I learned this, not learned it. I did this for a client. So I was speaking for Orkin, Rollins, Orkin's underneath the company. And my Orkin guy was coming out to do our fall or whatever cleaning. And and all the bugs from out of our trees and everything. And his name is Daniel. And I just had this gig coming up with Orkin. So I went out there, had a conversation with him, asked him some of the questions that I was going to ask the audience, and just made him the celebrated person. I asked him if I could do that. And so I said, you know what? I don't want to, when I was at the conference, I don't want to talk about this from a standpoint of what you might be thinking. Let's hear from one of your own employees. He comes over and services my our household. This is Daniel. Let's give it up for Daniel. He pulls up in his Orchid truck. He gets out. I got the big thing on him. Room went crazy
because you brought it home to them.
It was to them. It's right to
Right.
them, and that's what you're saying. I want to give that illustration about that. There's another story that you told. I'm going to ask it in three parts again, just like I did the last one. And you have to forgive me because I was trying to find the gentleman's name. I did not get it. The football player who forgave forgiveness.
His name
That's
is
all.
Warrick Dunn.
Warrick Dunn. Yes, Warrick Dunn.
Yes.
And so the first thing I want to ask is, would you please share that story again? The context is why stories work and why they're so powerful in that context. And I'm going to ask you I'm going to ask you an SI question, Sports Illustrated question, right after it. And then I have one more question for you right after I ask the SI question. So,
oh my gosh,
floor is yours, Don Yaeger.
Well, no, the story that we shared, John, is about a book that I had the opportunity to write several years ago. The subject of the book is a young man named Warrick Dunn. He was a professional football running back in the NFL for 13 years. In those 13 years, he finished with 11,000 yards rushing and 5,000 yards receiving. Incredible statistics. But maybe the number that was always most fascinating to me is he's only 5'8", weighs 178 pounds. So most people look at him and can't even imagine that guy could last in the NFL. But he's amazing. The backstory is that Warrick was a senior in high school, great football player, decides with his mother that he's going to go play at Florida State for the legendary coach Bobby Bowden. And a couple of weeks after they make that decision, Warrick Dunn gets a phone call, and it's the local police, the Baton Rouge police. His mother is a police officer, and the police call to tell him that his mother has been shot and killed in a robbery at a bank. As I said, he's just passed his 18th birthday. He's the man of the house. He's got all kinds of responsibilities. The coach calls him, says, "Young man, you don't need to come to Florida State. Maybe you want to stay at Louisiana State in Baton Rouge where you live. Be with your brothers and sisters." And Warrick says, "No, I'm coming to FSU, but I'm going to need a slightly larger apartment because I'm going to bring my younger brothers and sisters with me." And he puts them through elementary and middle school while he plays major college football. Incredible young man. Becomes an NFL football player and starts a charity buying homes for women like his mother. He's just bought his 260th home recently for single moms. And in the process of that, he wins the NFL Man of the Year award, the Walter Payton Man of the Year award. Gets a chance to write a book, asked me to write it with him. And to finish the book, he and I go to death row to meet the guy that killed his mom. We're sitting there on death row. It's maybe the most amazing hour I'll ever spend. And it's Warrick, myself, and Warrick's high school coach, the inmate, and the inmate's two lawyers. And the inmate begins the conversation by saying, "Oh, no, by the way, I wasn't even there the night it happened." He's lying to Warrick about the situation. And Warrick lets him go for quite some time. And then finally, after about 30 minutes, he holds up his hand and he says, "If you weren't there that night, I don't know why you came here today, but I came here today to forgive you." It was the most amazing thing I think I've ever witnessed in my professional life. Forget all the sports events and, speaking opportunities. To see one human being forgive someone for the unforgivable was the most amazing thing I've ever witnessed. And we got out of the prison, and I actually asked Warrick, I said, "Where did you get that?" He said, "My mother used to tell us that for all of us, there's a moment ahead that will change the direction in your life, a moment that will, as you've experienced, reshape everything about you the very next day. But in that moment, his mother used to say, you get two choices. You can be bitter or you can choose better. And as my child, I ask you to always choose better. Warwick, for me, became this living, breathing example of an attribute I'd love to have more of, right? Which is that ability within myself to look at a situation as the great ones do and see better.
Wow. Powerful. But more in forgiveness, and that's more about for us than the other person, for sure. Uh,
In
that's a
fact,
this
John, as we were walking out of the prison, the warden actually looked at Warwick and said, you know, we're going to execute this guy one day. And when we do, you're going to be invited to be in the room, right? To be in the room next to the event as it happens. And Warwick said, no, I don't need to be there because as of today, he holds no power over me. That's what forgiveness does for you, right?
yeah,
It frees you.
it frees you.
It frees you. And it was just such a powerful lesson.
Yeah, that's the liberation of forgiveness.
Yeah.
When you truly see it and you truly can forgive, it holds no more power. There's no more
Right.
power that's over you. That's so true. Um,
Mm.
so from that heavy story, I'm going to shift to SI, and thank you for sharing that. And you said something. You guys are on the top floor. All the writers doing your articles. But the number one question you all get when you're out there writing for SI is, so tell me about the swimsuit issue.
Yep, it was
Who gets the entire floor?
the swimsuit edition actually had its own floor
So
uh, of writers, designers, photographers, and they only had one edition a year. We had a floor, but we had to put out 50 editions a year. But yeah, it was at its prime, it was the most profitable single magazine in all of publishing history.
when you have something like that becomes, like, I'll call it a cash cow. How do you manage, as a leader, right? Because I see there can be some divisiveness that happens, or could be, right? So there is, man, you're putting out 50 freaking issues a year. They got one and have an entire floor. How do you manage, going back to our your first statement, the ego that might be associated with that?
Well, I think there's always a challenge in that. I think there are people that always overvalue themselves or have a sense. One of the things that really was made clear to us that worked in the 50 edition portion of the magazine was that that there was great value. I mean, the other portion of it, forget the branding value of the swimsuit edition, whether you liked it or didn't, right? It was very successful. Um, but the idea that their success allowed us to get a chance to travel and do some of the things that we got to do too. So I think anybody that finds themselves in a position where they're jealous of someone else might need to reframe a little bit and start thinking, is there is there is there advantage to all of us because something one part of the company might be doing a little better than another.
That's profound. Um, and I'm glad you said that, because I call that looking for the parallel path,
Hmm.
in the revision of my framing, my one of the models I share, because it's so easy to get caught up in, man, why do they get all that? What? Right, we're doing all this work over here. We should be getting, and we forget that we're part of this whole ecosystem,
Right.
that is moving in one direction on one vision, and that's for the success of the entire company. And so oftentimes maybe it'll be marketing versus R&D, or it could be another group versus another group, and we begin to have these divided silos instead of cross pollinating and make sure that everybody succeeds.
Right.
Uh, you know, so you have written 12 New York Times bestsellers.
Mm.
You can share them if you want to share them. They're all the back. Just go look up Don Yaeger, put the A before the E, because A's fast. What do you say? It's first in the alphabet.
I want to come. I want to come earlier in the alphabet. When you're in the Y's, you have to fight for position. It's pretty
I
hard.
love it.
Yeah,
Dr. Needle Cobain said, "Man, always stand on the right side of a picture, because they always when the picture, or the left side of the picture, because that means when they write the credits, your name
that's
comes
right.
first."
Your name comes
And
first.
so I
Exactly.
said, "Well, let's take a picture." And I went to go on the other side, and he said, "No, no, I'm going to stand here."
Ah.
It was awesome. Uh, the You've written these New York Times bestsellers. Seems like you just
Mm.
crank them out overnight. uh, on all these great athletes, all these amazing humans, fantastic stories. Who's writing the story on Don Yaeger?
No one. That's not going to happen.
What?
I am.
What? It's got
I
to
kind of
happen.
think that my gift is the ability to help other people tell their stories, and I want to keep it that way. I love telling the story of Warrick Dunn. Love telling the story of Walter Payton and the opportunity I had to live with him, and as he was passing. I love telling the story of John Wooden and the lessons I learned from. But they, um, but they're their stories. I just happen to have been lucky enough to be the fly on the wall.
But there's a story that's inside of that story. We didn't get into how you got into this. I didn't want to go down that road. Y'all can Google Don and read that stuff. But the one of the things that I'm a big believer in is that the person that we start becoming or become, there are other people that want to walk that path
Hmm.
and want to know how you did it, or what were some of the things that you did earlier on that positioned you for those type of opportunities, so that there's a success leaves clues, the breadcrumbs
Yeah.
for that. So from that perspective, I hope that you do get a chance to write one to help others see the pathway that they've had. I mean, you do some
I
great jobs with mentoring people and your staff, but go ahead. Yeah, I'm just
No, I think very simply the answer is I have an insatiable curiosity, right? I'm always trying to learn something about people, about situations, about items, products, reading all the time. So, and that really adds to the over preparedness that I think is important. Um, and then um, I try to treat everyone that I get a chance to engage um, as if they're just the most normal of all humans, right?
yeah.
It doesn't matter if it's Michael Jordan or John Register or my 16-year-old son. I think that if I can treat them all with the same level of interest and dignity and my own personal humility, if I can bring that into it, it allows me to make others feel comfortable in my presence. And when people are comfortable in your presence, they will share incredible things with you. And that's all I ask. I just want to be the person that people share things with.
Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Don Yaeger. How do people get a hold of you?
Well, donyaeger.com. But one of the things we're doing right now, John, is we're trying to follow your pathway to YouTube success. And so we're moving a
I'd love to
podcast
sell.
that we do right now. We do the Corporate Competitor podcast on YouTube, and so we're trying to grow some subscribers in that space. If people are on YouTube and look up Don Yaeger or Corporate Competitor podcast, I would be honored to have some folks listening in on the things that I've been lucky enough to learn from some pretty great leaders like yourself.
Don Yaeger, thank you so much. You're a gem. And the Corporate Competitor podcast is going to be on YouTube. It's up there right now. Follow
It
him.
is.
you are not going to be disappointed 100% for sure. So make sure that if you have the 8-track on, you push forward so you can go backwards. Some of y'all will get that.
Yeah.
And
The
I just
people
want to
that
say,
have like your gray beard or my gray hair on the side of our heads, those are the only ones that get that.
just wanted to say thank you once again. And we'll end the show right now. So stay tuned because we got some more information coming up for you right now. And we will just do it in just a second in 2 and 2.
That was Don Yaeger, storyteller, truth seeker, leadership translator. Let's recap of some of what we just heard. Amputating ego was Don's biggest elevation move. It made him more coachable, more connected, more effective. Curiosity isn't just a trait, it's a leadership strategy. Proximity to excellence changes how you think, how you act, and how you perform. Who you surround yourself with actually matters. Preparation is what separates the talented from the timeless. And storytelling is your greatest leadership multiplier. It's what moves your mission from task to transformation. Don, thank you so much again for your honesty and your depth. You set a very high bar, and that's exactly why we brought you on the show. To all of our listeners, if this episode helped you think bigger or lead better, like, subscribe, and follow. And if you're in a high-stakes season, share this with someone else who is too. This Amputate to Elevate Leadership Success podcast is brought to you by Inspired Communications International, where we help leaders amputate what no longer serves and elevate to win the medals in their lives. Until next time, go forth, inspire your world. Bye for now.